All right, well, we are officially live. We got a bunch of people in, so that's good news.
Cool.
Welcome everybody. This is the second in three summer speaker series for the summer. We're lucky enough tonight to be joined by PGA Champions Tour player and McKeesport native Brian Cooper. He's agreed to sit down and talk with us for about 45 minutes to an hour. And we'll just talk about his career and life as a professional golfer and a couple other things. And then if anybody has some questions at the end, we can certainly take some questions, Brian, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, awesome. So let's just jump right into it. I have about 8 or 9 questions for you. And one of the first ones, of course, since we are located in McKeesport and we are a regional museum for the area, tell us about your upbringing in McKeesport. What sports did you play at the time? And just give us a little insight into growing up in the Mon Valley.
Well, I mean, I have obviously some of the best memories of my life are growing up in McKeesport. I'd leave the house at 8 o'clock in the morning on my bike, and my mom wouldn't see me until dinner time. And, it was always with friends and sports. It was just sports. We'd ride out to Ramsey Park, and, then we'd come home, or we'd go to the pool, or we'd find ourselves in the woods somewhere doing something. I mean, growing up in McKeesport back then was a lot of fun. And, played every sport growing up. Played baseball, basketball, football, hockey, you name it. I mean, the only sports probably I didn't play back then were sports like soccer, tennis, and golf, ironically enough. But, growing up back there, it was a special time back then in the 70s and 80s in McKeesport and that surrounding area. Up until about the mills closed, there was no better place to grow up, in my opinion. You knew every neighbor on the street, you knew everybody on the street above you, one more above them. I mean, within 4 blocks, you pretty much knew everybody who lived in everybody's house. And nowadays, you're lucky if you know 2 or 3 people on your street that you talk to. So it was pretty cool growing up back there.
Now, was your dad, did he work in the mill, or what did your dad do, and your mom?
Yeah, my dad worked in Duquesne Mill.
Okay.
He ran a crane, and my mom was a drafting technician for Duquesne Light. So she worked in the city. But yeah, so they both worked. Jobs that I used to, when I ended up going to college, I would always be able to see my mom every day because her building was only, right down the street from campus. So, I'd get to see my mom probably, as much as I wanted or as much as I needed money.
Every parent's worst nightmare is a phone call from the college kid, because it usually is going to cost them something.
Yes, it's always money. Yes.
So what was your primary sport? I know that, baseball, I think, was up there, and you actually went to school on a hockey scholarship.
Right. Yeah. And then ended up leaving because I went to camp, and that just was not going to work out. When I went to camp, drinking age was 19. I went there at 18, but you were an athlete. So that just was not going to work out. Grades suffered. I'm extremely blunt about it. I was, my grade point average was below 2 my freshman year, but that was because, I didn't play, redshirted. It just wasn't going to work out very well. So then, basically, my options were to transfer home and go to school. And always grew up a Pitt fan. Duquesne was never really on the radar, but as a Catholic, it was on my mom's radar. So, the option really came down to, Pitt or Duquesne. My dad went to Pitt Dental School before enlisting in the Army and serving in Korea. So, I had, I had told my mom, I was getting tugged in one direction to go to Pitt and then one direction to go to Duquesne. And I literally called both hockey coaches and I told my mom, I said, whichever hockey coach calls back, that's where I'm going. And for me, thankfully, it was Duquesne. I mean, even looking back on it, I was too young to realize it then. But Pitt wasn't a good fit for me. As much as I love Pitt, as sports-wise, it probably wouldn't have been a good fit for me. Duquesne served every purpose that I needed it to serve, and it was a good fit for me. But growing up, it was baseball and hockey. Baseball, basketball, hockey. Football was a little, but not as much as the other sports for sure.
Very cool. Very cool. So let's jump into the next question, and the one that's been a big part of your life ever since is so how did you get interested in golf, and then how did you go about becoming a professional golfer?
Well, ironically, I mean, we used to go fishing a lot as a kid, and my dad would always take golf clubs, and so we'd hit golf balls into the water. And then I'd go to the range with my dad. But my dad was a really good player when I was young, and he played a lot with my older brother, Dana. But as I got older, I started to play. I played a little bit with friends. A lot of times it was either Butlers or go all the way out to South Park and play because I had friends out there in the South Hills. And it just grew. But it was never anything serious. Never took it serious. Even when I was in college at Duquesne, I was playing hockey and baseball. And I decided, why not try out for the golf team too to see what happens? And at that time, our SID was Nelly. And, he was also the golf coach. And he's just basically, and if I'm not recall, like in the walk-on tryout, I think I shot like one over. And he's like, yeah, you're not good enough. And I'm like, oh, well, all right. I mean, and I knew I beaten everybody in that qualifier, but I think, and it turned out since he was, the athletic director and SID and all that, it came back later that since I was already playing two sports, a third was just not going to be permitted. But, we grew up playing and, a little bit here and there. And as time went on, I started to play more I played more probably after college than I did before. And I had a friend that was working. He was an assistant pro at St. Clair. And I'd play a lot with him and other pros and a lot of pro-ams. And it then came a point when I was beating a lot of those guys. And I wasn't even playing. And, he has suggested, you should get into the business. You should get into the business. And, I thought about it. And, to be perfectly blunt, there weren't a lot of minorities in the tri-state section at that time. And, truth be told, when I got the job, I was, assistant's job, I was the only guy in the section. And I was lucky to get that job. And how I got that job was I was coaching hockey, high school hockey, a JV team at Bethel with Craig Stevenson. Or it wasn't Bethel, it was Chartiers. And I had a kid on the team whose mom's new husband's brother was a part owner at Hickory Heights. And she put in a word for me. He called me, he says, hey, we're looking for a guy up there. You should apply. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll apply. And it wasn't the first one I applied for. This was, down the line. And lo and behold, I got the job, which was very fortunate for me. And, I've been in the golf business ever since, and that was 92. I probably worked more than I played full time, but, for 15, 20 years, it was really, I worked to play, so, I'd work and then I'd play, then I'd work and then I'd play. I'd quit a job and go play for a year and then come back to a job, because that's just what it was at that point. But that's kind of where it took off from. And then, later in the years, lucky to get some sponsors here and there and some good people behind me. And, I have a lot of good people behind me now. And, and fortunate enough that I've actually played a little bit decent in the last few years. And so that's basically how it's come to fruition.
So I have a couple questions off of that, and one of them is in the list of things that I wanted to ask you, and I'm glad you brought it up. You said at the time, the Tri-State PGA section wasn't very diverse, And I think a lot of people still consider golf to not be an incredibly diverse game. You know, I think the women's game nowadays more so with the, you know, with a lot of the South Korean and the Asia players, you know, really dominating the LPGA tour. But for the most part, they're still it's still predominantly a white game. So the question I know I sent this to you. What do you think? What could be done to get more African Americans, more minorities involved in golf?
Wow, it's a tough question to tackle. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. That's a very oh boy, that's a tough question to tackle because there's really no right way to answer it, and you're gonna offend a lot of people. Because, you know, I feel like, you know, there's still a lot of separation when it comes to golf. And I feel a lot of that is on purpose, to be perfectly honest. I feel like, you know, all these other sports are, you know, you could argue that they're dominated by minorities. And part of me feels like sometimes, you know, they want to keep it that they want to keep this sport not so much like that. Same with tennis. You know, tennis is getting a little better, especially in the women's game, than it is the men's game. But it's just a personal feeling. What can be done? I mean, you have to get the leaders in golf. You have to get a guy like Tiger Woods. You have to get the guys who can make change happen. You know, I can maybe make change happen on a very small scale. But these guys and corporations need to get behind. The First Tee does a good job, but it's not big enough. I mean, you know, it needs to expand. There has to be more diversity in the game of golf. There's not, you know, as we know. I think right now on tour, you probably have, let me see, you got Harold. Okay, you got Harold, you have the kid from California. You have 3 or 4, maybe. You really have one full-time, and that's Harold. And that's when you're looking at a field of 128 to 144, depending on the event, those numbers don't work. You know, that's less than, you know, obviously that's less than 1%. That's kind of crazy. But you did hit on something really good about the women's game. The women's game is dominated by, if you want to call them minorities, the South Koreans, the girls from Japan. And, I mean, they do. I mean, but, you know, to be perfectly honest, I think their work ethic's a little bit different too. They're not really, even though they have a ton of sponsors, they're not really, it's not as big to them as it is here for our women. I mean, if you look at our American women, they're doing Puma, they're doing commercials, they're doing this. I'm not saying the South Koreans aren't over there, but their work ethic is amazing. I mean, you have to take your hat off to it. I mean, you look every week on their leaderboard, it's dominated by South Koreans, but that's not a mistake. You know, that doesn't happen by mistake. That happens, you know, for a reason. But here, I mean, there's more that needs to be done. Definitely, I don't know the right answer. I mean, I wish I did. But it needs to be done on a larger scale, and it needs to be done on a scale corporate-wise to help fund minority golf, to get into areas where kids are gifted enough to play if they have the opportunity to play. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen as often or as widespread as it should.
Yeah, you know, it's certainly something, you know, I mean, I've grown up around golf, and, you know, to be honest with you, you know, I've never met an African-American pro, you know, besides yourself. And, you know, it's amazing when you look at golf, especially the last, you know, 25 years, the Tiger era. I mean, the game has been dominated by, you know, an African-American Asian man. And, you know, it's hard to believe that, you know, I think, like you said, there's still a lot of issues on the, you know, at different levels as far as getting minorities involved, because you would think, you know, with somebody like Tiger, you know, really leading the charge for, you know, 15 years there, and even still now, even over the last decade with his injuries, you know, you would think that it would help grow the game a little bit more for for African Americans. And, hopefully, especially with everything that's going on now with the Black Lives Matter movement and things like that, hopefully, we'll see a little bit more diversity in the game over the next 20 years. And I think players like, obviously Tiger, but I mean, you look at Harold Varner and you look at yourself and, you look at the guys that came before you guys, like Lee Elder and things like that, or guys like that, I should say, I think I hope the game is going to head in the right direction. And I think, guys like you and Harold and Tiger.
It would be nice if the game started to go in a different direction. But in these times, I mean, unfortunately, I think, going in that direction, there's bigger issues. There's bigger issues than just sports. I mean, this.
Oh, absolutely.
We could get into, politics and everything with this because I think that plays a role. Unfortunately, when you have poor leadership, if it trickles down, there is a trickle down effect. And unfortunately, in this day and age, I think that we are full blown into this poor leadership trickle down effect. And it's sad, it's really sad. I mean, it's crazy every week that I play on Champions Tour that I'm the only minority playing. I mean, it's kind of nuts, but it's one of those things where, I've kind of grown up with that. It seemed like when I left McKeesport, and I started playing sports, I was the only minority on my college golf team. When I went to camp, there was 2 of us. But, when I got into the golf business, every event I went to in the Tri-State, I was the only one. When I moved out here, I was the only one. So I'm used to being the only one. So it probably doesn't affect me as much as it might affect some of the younger generation when they show up. And those are the ones we need to be more aware about. Because, in this day and age, how things are changing in society, if they aren't comfortable, then it's easy for them to leave the game. And I think you're seeing that right now, where a lot of places they're still not welcome. So if we're not welcome, then why are we going to play? And that's a tough thing for little kids. I mean, I don't think I ever felt that because my dad always pushed me, and being from a mixed family, my dad was white, so I kind of got away. When my dad would show up, it's a different kind of look. You don't get the perfect, that look where it's, 2 black parents showing up, so you don't see it as much. Mm-hmm. So, I'm grateful for that upbringing. But, I feel like a lot of kids today, it's easy for them to get pushed to the side and lose interest very fast because they're not getting that reinforced, hey, you're welcome. We want you to succeed. And, and that needs to change.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I hope with everything that's going on now, it does lead to that change over the next decade or two. And, hopefully once your son is, heading off to college, we'll be seeing more African-American and, more minorities across the board in both men and the women's game.
Yeah.
So let's shift gears and let's talk about your early years as a professional and then going forward just a little bit. So you mentioned that you kind of would do, you'd be teaching for a year or two, then you'd go on tour for a year or two and things like that. Just talk about those early years before you were playing on the Champions Tour, and just what your typical situation was like at the time.
I mean, I can start when I lived in Pittsburgh and I worked, they weren't that tough. Play event. I wasn't the best player in the section. I could hold my own, but I was young. I was raw. I was, self-taught through my brother, my dad, myself. So, my swing was just purely based on being an athlete, more than anything else. But when I moved to Arizona, I finally started to get a little bit comfortable playing. I was working at the course where ASU was. ASU at that point was, one of the top 5 teams in the country. So I got to play with a lot of great amateurs. And, it was funny that the first year there, I decided to leave and I went to play in South America. And I remember the first event I showed up to, it was in Ecuador. And I go to the tee and I'm paired with Carlos Franco. And I looked down at his bag, and he has a bag tag from the previous year's British Open. And it was an eye-opening experience. I mean, it really was, because here you are thinking you're a pretty decent player, and now you're playing with a guy who just played in the British Open. Come full circle, Carlos and I are absolutely great friends. We play practice rounds together now on Champions Tour. I mean, I love him. He's an absolute joy to be around. But that year in South America, I played 11 events, and I think I made one cut. And I got my head beat in. I mean, it was an eye-opening experience. But it's what you have to do as a player. You have to go through that kind of struggle until you are comfortable, or until you either figure out, yeah, I can play this game, or no, I got to move on and teach and fold shirts for a living or whatever you're going to do. But it progressively got better. I'd work a little, then I'd come back and play. Then I'd work a little, and there was a point where I was kind of comfortable staying and working versus playing. And I played a lot of section events, and then we had a tour out here that started, a mini tour, a Gateway Tour. It was a really good tour to it. It kind of lost its focus. And there was a lot of great players that played there. A lot of players who went on from that tour to play on the PGA Tour, went on the PGA Tour, go all around the world. So it was at that period, it was a good hotbed of talent out here where you could play and you were challenged, and it was good. And they're all a learning experience. But there also came a point there where, I lost my dad due to cancer, and, my focus in golf kind of switched, because I knew I was playing this game because my dad loved it so much. It was kind of our connection. And, I kind of lost my way there for about a year and a half, where, it was tough. Mentally it was depressing. And, I can remember playing events and playing 3 or 4 holes and just leaving in a face full of tears, just because, it just wasn't the same. The game didn't mean anything to me at that point. It was, I'm getting kind of misty-eyed right now just remembering those times. I mean, it was just, the game wasn't fun. It just, like I said, more than anything, I lost my way, and then I took like a year off. I got a real job. But during that period, I mean, it was what I needed. I got help, and then during that period, it was one of those times where I got refocused, and I got, I wanted to play again. I got lucky and met a great guy, Mark Grace, that played for the Cubs, and he was out here, and we got together, and he helped out and got me going, and that was a big step, and it kind of got me refocused, and and then I played for a while, and but there came a point in my 40s where I'm like, holy crap, man, I'm at a weird place right now. I mean, am I good enough to make the PGA Tour? Probably. How successful can you be? I don't know. Do you want to play at that time, a buy.com or Nike or, whatever it was. I think it was buy.com still at that point, that, with a bunch of college kids. I mean, it was just in that really funky stage between 40 and 50 where you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? But then, I hung in there and battled through. And I said, if I'm going to play, I think my goal had to be thinking towards, Champions Tour. Even though years ago I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to play Champions Tour. I mean, I'm just not going to do it. But what a great avenue. So I worked pretty hard to get there. I went and qualified to play in Latin America, and I used that. My success wasn't based on money or anything. It was based on getting reps and playing 4 days and walking and getting used to that to prepare for Champions Tour. And then I really feel like the turning point for me was when I was 49. I won the Arizona Open out here, playing a bunch of young kids. I was the oldest person to ever win that tournament at 49, which was pretty cool. But after winning, I set myself a goal. I said I want to be the first person to ever hold both trophies at the same time. And it's 7 months later, lo and behold, I won the senior. And at that point, I knew I felt something. I knew my game had changed at that point. That I was definitely getting into that position where I was ready to do something. And then I just kept pursuing. And, I've been lucky enough and fortunate enough to have, support and it's worked out pretty well so far. And, I expect bigger and better things with our shortened season this year and then going into 2021.
When does the Champions Tour season start this year? I haven't heard.
We start the 27th is that week. So we got, another 8 days, 9 days before we're back at it. And then we get back at it. We have, oddly enough, we play one tournament and then we're off for a month again. And then we have a stretch of, it was going to be 5 in a row. Now it's 4 in a row. They just canceled Iowa. But then there's potential for 3 more on top of that based on some money and, otherwise not exempt. And I can explain it, but it wouldn't make any sense to most people. So there's, basically we're now end of the season. We're at a, 5 event season with potential to be 8. So we'll see what happens.
So just take us into like a typical day for you, like when you're home, a typical day when you're, preparing for a tournament.
Pre-COVID or with COVID?
Well, maybe both, considering I don't think it's going to end anytime soon. So this is probably whatever you're doing now is probably what you're going to be doing for a year or two at least. So.
Yeah. I'd say pre-COVID, there was a lot of, 2 days a week I like to hike, 2 days a week I like to do hot yoga, and 2 days a week I like to do strength training. But now it's more like it's at home strength training as best you can. If you want to hike, you can. It's kind of hot. So, you're kind of limited and trying to find other things to do. A little bit of running has come into play. And then it's a lot of practice. I mean, as hot as it is, it's still spending time at the course. And, at this point, my sponsor's Weston Clearland, but summertime, TPC clears out a lot. So I spent a lot of time at the TPC hitting balls and playing. And so, on average, I'm looking, up in the morning and doing whatever I need to do at home with my son and wife. And then we move on to, practice and working out, more working out, more practice. So, it really does vary. I want to spend a lot of time playing on the golf course rather than practice. So most of the time, I'll hit balls and then I'll just see a hole open. I'll go sneak on the hole and move on and go play as many holes as I can. And if I only get 2 or 3 in, I feel like I need to do some more work, head back and hit more balls. But it's a 5 to 6 day deal being at the golf course. I'm there a lot. So it's grueling, but it's fun. It's better than what most jobs would be.
I was just about to say I follow your method of I'd rather actually play than go hit balls at the range sort of thing. But
I think you learn more that way personally. I mean, you could get into a groove on the range hitting balls, but if you get out there now, it's not a perfect line. You have a side hill line. You're hitting uphill, and it changes. So there's no for me. I get more purpose out of being on the course and hitting the ball into a fairway bunker. Now you got to figure out how to get it out of the fairway bunker versus sitting on the range and hitting 200 balls or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's it's amazing, the daily life for you guys, and you mentioned it, how strength training and the yoga and things like that. You think back 10, 15 years ago, Tiger was really the only guy that was hitting the gym and things like that. Now it's just such a typical, it's part of the job really for a professional golfer, just like any other athlete now, that you guys are, you're in the gym, you're doing yoga, you're doing different, cardio stuff. I think it's amazing just how much, I think a lot of people just assume you guys go out and play, every day and that's it kind of thing. But I don't think a lot of people realize, at least the average person doesn't realize just how much, athleticism you guys are really putting into your daily routine, with everything. I just think that's amazing. I think obviously it's important too. I mean, the more flexible you are and the better shape you are, the longer you'll last, in the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is. I think, and especially, at my age, I mean, I think the better shape you can be in, I think it's a decided advantage. I think, you look at the tour and there's a lot of guys out there who are in great shape. I mean, they're put together. You look at Dustin Johnson, Bryson. You look at these guys, and Rory. I mean, they're fit, man. They're put together. But you don't see that on Champions Tour. So when you have one that works out as much as say I do, I'll say it. It's a decided advantage. I mean, it's. I know that when I show up there, I'm sure people aren't looking at me as a golfer. They're like, what the heck is this guy walking up here? But, it's a little different. But it's, I find that, that hard work has definitely paid dividends for me. And, I don't see any reason to change anything. I've definitely added muscle during the quarantine. But it's, I don't see any reason why I wouldn't continue on the path that I'm doing physically, trying to stay fit. So we'll see what happens.
While we're on the topic, I'm going to ask you for the question I'm about to ask Brian. For those of you who don't pay much attention to golf, it has to do with Bryson DeChambeau. He's a young player on tour. He's a multiple winner. And over the quarantine, since about February, Bryson put on about 40 to 50 pounds of straight muscle. So he could hit the ball further. And I had the golf on this morning, and he hit a 423-yard drive, which just seems it just seems impossible. Like, it doesn't make sense to even say it. What do you make of that? What do you make of there's a lot of talk in golf about the distance problem. What do you make of what Bryson's doing? What do you make of the so-called distance issues and things like that?
I mean, first and foremost, he's a strange bird. I mean, that's no disrespect to him. I mean, he's definitely a strange bird, but I mean, he's found something that works for him.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty simple. I mean, the kid's found something that works for him. He put on muscle, and he decided that this was going to be what he's going to do. That's going to change his game. And who am I to sit there and argue with his results? I mean, okay. I mean, it might not be for Tom, Dick, or Harry out there playing, but it works for him. I mean, he's done this, and he's been successful at it. So if he did it and it totally messed him up and he was all over the place, you can easily criticize him. But, when Tiger did it, people were like, well, why is he doing this? Why is he getting all big? And, but you can say it hurt him in the long run because, he went through some injuries and everybody thinks this is a direct result of what he did, and maybe he did it the wrong way. I don't know. I don't know him to ask if he felt like his strength training was a little unorthodox and maybe that caused the injuries. But at this point, strange bird or not, you can't argue with what's transpiring with Bryson's game. I mean, he's hitting it longer, he's making putts, and he's cashing checks. And as a golfer, all you're trying to do is make money and win. And he's done that. So, kudos to him. I mean, I don't want to put on 40 pounds, but if it works for him, I mean, it works for him. I mean, guys who are arguing and saying, "Oh, it's weird," blah blah blah. I'm sure their bank account's a little less than Bryson's at this point.
Yeah. All right. We're at about 40 minutes. I have 3 questions left for you, and then if anybody has questions, we'll let you ask Brian yourself. The first question I have is, you've played in 3 senior major championships over the last couple years, 2 U.S. Senior Opens, and then last year you got the chance to go over to Britain for the Senior British. Just talk about that. I mean, it's got to be such a cool thing to be playing in a tournament like that. I know just, you know, in my life, just going to those tournaments as a spectator is super cool. I can only imagine what it's like to actually be, you know, playing one.
Well, I teed it up. I mean, I think I let in every one of them. To be perfectly honest, I think I let the moment take over, and by the time you get through the moment, you're behind the eight ball. But I thoroughly enjoyed every major that I played in. I don't know if one is more special than the other. Obviously, your first major is pretty cool, but there is something about that whole introduction in the British. It's a whole different kind of welcome, and I thought the British was pretty cool, especially where they played at Royal Lipton and St. Anne's, where they've had so many regular British Opens. And really just to go all that way, it's different to qualify in my mind. It's different to qualify for the U.S. Open because, for me, I qualify for the U.S. Open probably, 10 miles from my house. The British, you're flying all the way over to England, and you're jet lagged, you're different time, So to do it and make it happen when it really, really mattered. The British was pretty cool, but they all rank up there with me pretty good. I actually have all the badges and locker identification sitting right there, and so it's here. I'll let you see. It's pretty cool to see them all, and
I can see the caddy bib behind you too. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, I've kept all of them. That's when I was medalist one year, and these are all that's last year's at Notre Dame. That's at the Broadmoor, and that's the British up there. So it's it's pretty cool to have them, and I think this is my brother kept one. I think my brother kept one like that. That was from he kept the one from the Broadmoor, and I kind of snuck that one away last year at Notre Dame. So now I got one. I don't need any more. So hopefully there's some more majors in my future that maybe we can get one of those with a win, and then maybe keep that one. That one would be pretty special.
That'd be very cool. Let's get into a couple of fun questions. So what are some of your favorite golf courses to play in the Pittsburgh area, across the globe? Where do you play out of at home too? Is it TPC Scottsdale or?
Yeah, so here I go between the Weston Kierland Resort and Spa and TPC.
Okay.
Those are my two courses here. My favorite course is undeniably is in my backyard, and it's Oakmont. I love it. I can never get sick of playing it. It's a very special place. I think it's even more special now. Some people won't agree with me. I think it's a more special place now without the trees there, because that's how it was. That was how it was intended to be played. It was supposed to be a links style golf course where it's pretty cool. At Oakmont, you can stand on a putting green and you can see basically every hole except, let me see, 10, 11, 12, 16. 13, 14 and 16, basically. 17, you get to see the green. You don't get to see the tee shot. But so basically you get to see 90% of the golf course, which is unique in this era because golf courses are so spread out and so, you got so many trees on a lot of golf courses. It's a pretty unique place to play. I don't travel a lot to play golf, so I don't know. It's easy to say, Royal Lipton and St. Anne's ranks right up there, just because of that kind of experience. But I'm really. What's the right word? I love Kierland. I love my golf course where I practice at here. I've been there for, almost 15 years. Nobody's played more rounds of golf at that golf course than me, but I love it. But there's a lot of golf courses that I like to play in my mind, and hopefully by playing Champions Tour, there's some on the schedule that'll afford me that opportunity. So So hopefully we'll get a chance to do a couple of those.
How many times have you played Oakmont?
20.
Oh, you've been up there that much. Okay. I don't know.
Every time I come home, I'm fortunate enough to get to play. Frank Fuhrer's son, Dave Fuhrer, takes me up all the time and plays as long as the schedule matches up with his. It's pretty much an easy phone call. Hey, you free? Yeah. Can we play? Yeah. Okay, great. Let's do it. And it's, it seems like I always spend more money in the shop every time I go there than I do, tipping the caddy or whatever. So it's, but it's a unique place, and there's a lot of history and memories there. So it's pretty cool to play it.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever told you. I'm actually the historian up there.
Oh, are you?
Yeah, one of those things that just complete dumbass luck that I fell into that job right after the Open in 16. So all the cases and stuff that you see when you walk through the clubhouse, that's me, tinkering and getting awesome. In those cases and stuff like that. So yeah,
cool.
The history there is absolutely amazing, and I agree with you. I never saw it without the trees, or I should say I never saw it with the trees. But it is just absolutely, like, you look out on it and it's green and it's brown, and for some people that's not exactly, I guess, like, sexy as far as the golf course is concerned. But like, once you actually play it and you see, just those subtleties of that course, that it's just, it really is amazing. It's beautiful. It's the place to, there's great golf courses, and then there's the top tier, and Oakmont's certainly one of them.
Definitely.
One of the other questions I had for you, you were on the Golf Channel's The Big Break twice. Just talk about that a little bit for people that don't know what it is and your experience on it.
Well, I mean, it's a, I don't know if you want to call it a game show. Obviously, it's a competition show Golf Channel had. And I was lucky enough to be on two series, Big Break Greenbrier and Big Break NFL. In Greenbrier, I felt going into it, I was ready, and I wasn't. It was one of those things where, you can prepare for it. You talk to friends that have been on the show prior. They're saying, practice this, and you do it, and you get there. And that moment just, boy, it takes over. I mean, it's tough. It's not live, but it's still different because, you got 11 or 12 cameras lined up in front of you. You got one at the putting, you one at the green or target you're hitting. You got one above you. I mean, it is, and there's no warm-up. I mean, it's like you're sitting on the bench and you're waiting. They're like, okay, it's your shot. And you're like, oh, boy. So when people sit at home and they're like, oh, my God, how'd you miss the green for 150? It's like, okay, well, you sit down for an hour. You go ahead and grab your wedge or 9-iron or 8-iron or 7-iron, whatever you hit. And let's see you go ahead and try to just be perfectly ready to go. It's not that simple. But a lot of Pittsburgh and me came out on Greenbrier. A lot of it that, I know it's who I am. Some of it I'm not too it's easy to look back and say, I made some mistakes, with some outward emotion on that show. But you live and learn. It doesn't change who I am. I wasn't doing it to be disrespectful to anybody. It's just, it's just who I was. But, then I got another chance to do NFL. NFL's experience itself, honestly, wasn't the greatest, and that was just because my NFL guy, I mean, it's no secret we didn't get along, and, I didn't really care for him too much. I mean, he's passed away since, and, it's condolences to his family, but, I mean, we didn't get along. He was, he did everything he could to, try to make us self-destruct, so to speak, and if he would have just taken a minute to realize that, he had the two best players on that cast, it would have went over a lot better, But going in on that show itself, I will self-admit there was nobody better than me on that show. I mean, I was on top of my game for that 14, 12 days or whatever it was, and I'm not bashful about saying that, there was nobody better than me on that show, and I felt like if it would have turned into a show where it would have been just the professionals playing the professionals without the NFL guys, that, you know, the team that won would have just had zero chance of winning. It wouldn't have even been close. But, you know, it's part of the show. It doesn't take away from the experience. I mean, it was truly amazing. It was a gift to be able to be on that show, not only once, but twice, and then get invited back to the event that they had at Reynolds. It was a live TV showcase, which, you know, it's pretty cool to be able to have those kind of memories to look back on that, you know, a lot of people, you know, don't get a chance to do. I mean, it's pretty unique opportunities, and totally grateful for them. I mean, I'm still in contact with a lot of people who work behind the scenes at Golf Channel. They've moved on to other things, but we've remained friends, and it's just an amazing experience.
Very cool. Just a couple more questions real quick. What's the lowest score you've ever shot?
59.
And where'd you shoot that at?
Carolyn. Oddly enough, I did it probably a month after I was cleared to play after elbow surgery.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah,
you're a little
weird.
rusty too, so just free swinging.
Just like, yeah, I didn't even care. And before I knew it, I was like 7, 8 under. And I was like, oh my God, there's something going on here today.
What's the best score you shot at Oakmont?
I shot 68 at Oakmont.
Wow.
Yeah. And oddly enough, I shot 68 and I was even on, after leaving 16 green, I finished 2-3.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I finished 2-3. Made 2 on 17, you know, and drove 17 green, made like a 25-footer, and then hit like driver 8-iron to like 4 feet on 18 and made birdie.
Good for you.
me and Dave sure made a lot of money that day in the SWAT.
Oh, there you go. How many times have you played in the SWAT?
Generally, we play every time.
Oh, okay.
I mean, he tries to get it so that we play in it every time when I come home. So
cool.
It's worked out probably 90% of the time. Only a couple times that we played where it's just been him and I with another group just playing. But he generally tries to get it so that it's in the SWAT.
That's cool. That's very cool. Yeah. For those that don't know, the SWAT is it's Oakmont's claim to fame. Their game.
Legendary.
Yeah, it's legendary. We have the books that have recorded every single SWAT match dating back, I think, till 1955. So, I mean, it's pretty cool when you go back through those books and you see some of the names of the people, you know, Arnie and Johnny Miller.
A lot of famous people played that. A lot of touring pros, a lot of just bigwigs that work in corporate America. You know, it's pretty neat. You know, other athletes playing in it. You go back, you can see names and you're like, what? Yep. Yeah, it's pretty neat.
Yeah, it's real cool. Last question that I have for you is, you know, your son Ashton is 7 now. You said, what advice would you give to parents that want to get their kids involved with golf, or if the kid wants to get involved with golf? What's some words of wisdom that you can preach as far as you know, having your kid involved in any sport, but let's particularly golf?
Just let him play. I mean, you know, Ash doesn't play a lot of golf. My son doesn't play a lot of golf, and I mean, part of me is kind of thankful for that. But he actually has a really good golf swing when he does play, and I think that's because he's a really good hockey player, and that's his sport, and he really excels at that. And you know, if you look at even these celebrities that play, and you know, a lot of hockey players are really, really good golfers because it's pretty much the same swing. So he doesn't play a lot of golf, but you know, when he does, and I get him lessons, I don't deal with it. I mean, his lessons aren't from me, and I fine tune or I help him, but you know, I take him to a place where he gets lessons, and I'm not around. I'm not watching. I mean, it's just, and that has seemed to give him a very good base. And then he and I will go to my course and we'll hit balls for, you know, 20 or 30 minutes. And then we put our clubs on a cart and we go, and he plays from a 150. And at this point, I don't even play. I just drive the cart, drive out to the 150 and he plays. And You know, I just recently backed him up to the 200s on par fives, but he has a couple natural birdies already and too many pars to count. But, you know, for a kid that doesn't play, I mean, I think next year will be a year for me to maybe in the summer get him into a couple events and just see where he stacks up, just see how he does. But he has a really good golf swing. I would tell other parents, just let him go. They're going to find their way. You know, they're going to, whether it's golf, whether it's tennis, soccer, baseball, you know, they're going to find their own way. They're going to find a sport that they like. The worst thing you can do is push one on them that he's not sure about, but you are sure about, and just keep emphasizing, play this, play this, play this. You know, I skate my son to death. I'm not going to lie, but he loves it. I mean, he enjoys it. And like I said, he's a good little player. You want to come say hi? Come here. Come say hi. You tell me who your favorite football player is, your favorite hockey player. Come on. Yeah.
Is it the same guy?
Hey, buddy.
Who's your favorite hockey player? Huh? Who's your favorite hockey player?
I already know it.
You got to tell them.
Sidney Crosby.
And who's your favorite football player?
Big Ben, Juju, Dennis Conner, and all of them.
He may be born in Arizona, but he has Pittsburgh running through his veins.
Hey, you know what? They're the best. You know, I grew up on the other side of the state, and I still root for all the Pittsburgh sports teams except for the Pirates.
Well, I don't think anybody roots for the Pirates. I
Yeah.
love the Pirates. I love the fact that we have one of the best ballparks in the league. But until you get nutting out of there, I mean, I think that's
Agreed.
It's just a bad situation. You got a guy that doesn't care about winning. He cares about money. Not only there's a lot of owners that care about money, but those same owners care about winning too. So,
yeah.
But you spend nutting, win nutting.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of our emails back and forth have been related to football. So if they do get to play this year, is Ben going to be the MVP? Because I just have a feeling he's going to.
I think Ben has an enormous chip on his shoulder this year. I mean, I think I think a lot of it stems from the whole handling of Antonio Brown. Everybody was blaming Ben, and now when you look at it, you can see Antonio Brown. I mean, there's that engine's misfiring right there. So, I just think Ben doesn't get enough credit for what he does. I mean, you got a guy that's the only guy in history of the NFL to pass for 500 yards back-to-back weeks and 6 touchdowns, and let's be honest, we know where we are without Ben.
Yeah.
Okay.
We saw what it was last year. Yep.
So if you know that, then I think you need to sit back and say, well, yeah, you're probably right. I mean, he's the engine that makes this team go. Yeah. I mean, if it wasn't for a great defense last year, I mean, you're looking at a team that's probably 4-14 or so. I mean, maybe. I mean, the defense won them a few games, or at least stalled the other team enough to allow the Steelers to win. I mean, but there comes a point when we are going to have to, move on from Ben. I mean, I'm friends with him, and it's going to be sad to see him go. But just like any other great athlete, they have a chance. They have a right to live their life, and there's a time that they got to step aside. But it's going to be a tough. It's going to be very difficult for that team to succeed unless they make some changes very fast without Ben. But I think this coming year, depending on if we play and how much we play, I think he definitely is going to he definitely going to have a chip on his shoulder for sure. I'm looking forward to seeing the show.
Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to it too. I don't know if anybody has any questions. If anybody has a question for Brian, we have a couple minutes if that's okay to answer questions.
Don't be bashful. Just don't bring up politics.
Let's avoid the politics talk. That just gets everybody's blood boiling these days. But if anybody has any questions, feel free to unmute and ask a question. Brian, is there anything you'd like to let everybody know, whether about the tour or anything just in general you'd like to?
No, I mean, I'm looking forward to getting back. I've put in a lot of work, up during this whole, downtime, to be ready. I feel like mentally I'm ready. I feel like, I've corrected the one thing that was holding me back last year, which was my putter. I mean, it's simply stated, mostly, I think 5 of the 6 events I, played in last year, I led the tour in driving distance. I was top half in fairways and greens. And, my putting was 64th or worse. So, when you're 64th or worse in a 78-man field, that's not going to serve you pretty well. But I own that. I mean, I definitely didn't putt well last year. It was really uncanny because I've always been a good putter. But, I spent a lot of time from the end of last year and through this whole downtime I've changed putters, changed setup. There's a lot of changes I made. And I feel like right now, putter-wise, I feel like I'm in a place where, I can excel. I don't need to be, like my coach says, he says, you don't need to be a top 5 putter. I don't need to make you a top 5 putter. I need to make you a top 25 putter. He says, if I make you a top 25 putter, he says, that's saving you 3 a round. He says, if I can save you 3 a round, that's 9 during the week. Now you're already nice. Say you finish 5 under for the week, but you finish 30th. Now you're 14 under. Maybe that 14 under is the win, because of those. So I'm looking forward to it. I mean, with the shortened season, I mean, there's a lot of pressure to get out at and get out at it quick. So, I hope, you don't put, I don't put too much pressure on myself to feel like I have to get out there the first week in Michigan and get in and play well or whatever. I mean, it's just got to be patient, but, we don't have a lot of time this year. We don't have 15 events. We got 5. And, if you could just do a little bit in those 5, I mean, I think, it changes everything because of how they've changed the last 3 events that were Schwab Cup events into regular events, but you can get into them based on money and otherwise not exempt category. So it's kind of confusing, but I know it's set up very well for me to succeed if I just kind of handle my business.
Well, Brian, we wish you the best. I hope you get that big win this year. And, thanks for taking the time out to do this. We really appreciate, everything you've done for our museum and letting us share your story in the exhibit. And we appreciate you taking the time tonight to sit down and give us a little insight into your career and your life and things like that. This was great. Thank you so much again. And I hope we'll get to see you soon. And hopefully, at the very least, we get to see you next year when we hopefully can get that golf outing going.
Yeah, that would be really nice. And I appreciate you, asking to have me on. And I was home, a couple of weeks ago, and I got to see the exhibit, and it was an emotional experience for me. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Brian. We appreciate it all. So everybody, thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this little conversation between Brian and myself. If you have not been down at Heritage Center, we certainly encourage everybody to get down there. So there's some new things going in. In fact, I spent about 3 hours yesterday working on a Kennywood portion of a new exhibit. So there'll be some new stuff to see over the coming weeks. Make sure you follow us on social media and check out our YouTube channel. You'll be able to rewatch this video there, hopefully either as early as tomorrow, maybe even tonight. And everybody stay safe, stay well, social distance, wear your masks, and hopefully we'll get back to some semblance of normal soon. So thank you, everybody. Brian, thank you again. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, you too.